And so now let's get started with some strength and power and explosiveness with Coach Garcia. Just a little quick introduction. I won't go through the whole thing, so we introduced him so many times already, but Nick Garcia is a proud graduate of Cal State Northridge, as we were just talking about. He got both his bachelor's and his master's degree there in kinesiology. He was the two-time Big Sky champion in the shot. Currently teaching PE, coaching the throwers, and is the strength and conditioning coach at Notre Dame High School. So in addition to doing these clinics, he's been coaching football and track the whole time. So we really do appreciate his time with us. He's achieved IAAF Level 5 and USATF Level III certification in the throws. Those are the highest certifications available in the track and field world. So the man is into his stuff. So let's, without further ado, my pleasure to welcome back Coach Nick Garcia. And this is Methods to Develop Strength, Power, and Explosiveness. Nick, you're on.
All right, thanks. Thanks, guys, for listening. The goal here today is to not only give you traditional things that you know of, for example, the clean, the snatch, etc., but throw some other stuff in there as well to help you guys train your athletes, because lots of times I hear things like I can't get in the weight room because the football team's in there, etc., or we don't have the equipment you need. Well, I got a bunch of jumping routines, a bunch of medicine ball routines, and also resistance training. The first thing I'm going to go over is how the components of our strength and conditioning training system, and we'll go from there. Everything kind of merges together pretty good. Like Mr. O'Rourke said at the very end, if you have some questions, go ahead and fire away. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Let's see. One thing I would recommend is, if I know this is going to be on the website for LA84, but if you want the videos now, just record them now off your phone or off a tripod or whatnot. People have told me they record them off tripods and whatnot. This presentation is far too large to send to anybody email-wise. It's 55 slides with a bunch of videos. So just be aware that if you like something you see at the very end, you ask questions, I'll go back to it and you guys can check it out or film it while we're going. So here we go. I just want to minimize my window so it's not in your way. We should be good now. All right, so objective here. So I have an objective for all my athletes, okay? It's to develop all-around athleticism of each student athlete by applying the concept of training toenail to fingernail while using methods that include multi-jumps, multi-throws, speed, agility, and resistance training, okay? I think of the body like a spoke bicycle wheel. Whether you're a sprinter, a distance runner, a thrower, a jumper, everything's got to be in sync. And if it's not in sync, okay, it'll fall apart or something will break. Just like a spoke bicycle wheel. Like there's 30 or 40 spokes on there, maybe more. If one of those spokes compromises the integrity of the wheel, the whole thing can collapse. So your body's very much like that. So you'll see that I have a very multifaceted way of training the athlete. Some reason here. Mr. O'Rourke, my screen's frozen. Oh, here we go.
There we go.
Okay, so components of my strength training power training system. Okay? We train on multiple planes, okay, which means your sagittal plane, your frontal plane, and your transverse plane. Okay, right here is a video of Quentin Lyons. He threw 62 feet for me his junior year. We get a shot of senior year because of COVID, but he trains extremely hard, and you'll see this in the circuit that we do at the very end as an example of training multiple planes. And I'll repeat it at the end. Okay, resistance training, okay, obviously is a component. The Olympic lifts is part of the resistance training, okay, or variations of the Olympic lifts. Velocity based, I'll talk a little bit about that. Most of our training takes place velocity based at this time. And whenever somebody enters the room, just so you guys know, that's why my screen freezes until they're let in. See, it just froze again. Okay, power lifts. Okay, we're talking velocity based once again. And power lifts are your squat, your bench, your deadlift. Your Olympic lifts are your clean, your snatch, your jerk, or variations of. multi-jumping routines, multi-throwing routines, and I call them multi-jumps and multi-throws because they're both plyometric in nature. So I classify them as multi-jumps or multi-throws rather than just plyometric. Okay, what are the components of multi-jumps? Okay, we start off with high volume, low to medium intensity jump circuits, and you'll have examples of those in a second. Okay, and that's what I include in my volume cycle, and volume cycle will make sense as we move along here in the presentation. Then we move to box jumps. Okay, that's a strength development cycle. Okay, now the high volume jump circuits merge up with the volume cycle, the theme. The box jumps, the strength development cycle, not necessarily, but they fit in my system in that spot. Hopefully this will make more sense as we move along. Box jumps, you can either do regular box jumps, up a box, down a box, or we do them in an ascending fashion, which means we go a 3-inch box, a 6-inch box, a 12-inch box, 18, a 24, etc., up to 30 or 36. Then during our neural training cycle, which is the final cycle before our big meets, big CIF meets, etc., league meets, we combine the multi-jumps and multi-throws together. And that's a neural training cycle, and that definitely merges up with the theme of being a neural training cycle. Components of multi-throws. We have something called a heating series, a pressing series, and combination series, which I talked a little bit about a second ago. The training structure. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I set up my sessions, which means a workout per day. Our weekly structure, how many times a week we train as far as resistance training and explosive training and power training. And how I cycle the structure. I talked a little bit about that a second ago about we have our volume cycle, we have our strength development cycle, and we have our neural training cycle. Session structure. All right, so we're going to warm up. Okay, I'm sure everybody warms up. Now, one thing that Vern Gambetta has been a mentor of mine, and you guys may disagree, but going out and having your kids run 2 laps, if they're a jumper or a thrower or a sprinter, it's just kind of lazy running. You're kind of enforcing like poor running technique. So make the warm up meaningful, and that's my opinion. You guys can disagree with that, but make it meaningful. Don't just say go run a mile, go run 2 laps or whatnot. Make it meaningful. Something that you want to include in your warm up, something that you're going to accomplish and get better at or need to get better at. Okay, during this session structure, I have 3 modules. Okay, module number 1, an explosive movement, a core movement, and a prehab movement. Okay, so all my athletes that I work with personally are screened as far as the movement screen, and it kind of predicts on a score of your chance of being injured or not. So when we do a prehab movement, it's based off that movement screen. So if that movement screen tells me that they have tight hips or they have tight shoulders or they are poor in the core area in some manner, then we will go ahead and use an individual prehab movement for their workout. And everybody's will be a little bit different. Module 2, lower body movement, upper body movement, which is a pulling movement and an ancillary movement, okay, and a mobility movement, okay. And once again, that mobility movement can be considered a prehab movement, but normally what we'll do is during that mobility movement, we're going to do something that prepares us for our next module. And so module 3 would be a hinge hip movement. We often call the posterior chain backs, more or less for the hamstring area. And we train all our athletes single leg for the hamstring. A lot of people like to do Nordic hamstring curls and heavy RDLs and whatnot. Well, that's not how the body works when you're running. So we train our hamstring all single leg in a sense, just like you do when you're running, okay? And that's an opinion of mine, and that's how I've been taught to do it, and that's how I believe is the best way to do it, okay? Upper body pushing movement. This could be a main movement like a bench press or an incline press, or it can be an ancillary movement like a dip or something along that manner, or a seated press, something like that. And finally, this mobility movement will help counter the lower body movement. So for example, if they're squatting Usually that results in tight IT bands. So we'll do something like a half kneeling external rotator stretch or a pigeon stretch, something along those lines during module 3 to help counter the tightness we developed from the lower body movement that we performed that day. Now, the mobility movement I was talking about in module 2 would prepare us for bench press, okay, the upper body pushing movement, and a pec stretch, a chest opener, a gymnastic ring series, something to prepare our pec and our shoulder girdle before we bench. Especially because if you tear a pec and you're not prepared or warmed up properly, you're out for the season. The pec is 6 months, okay, if not more. Weekly structure. We train 3 times per week, okay? We follow that session structure each time that I showed you, 3 modules per day. Let's go back to that real quick. I forgot to mention something. Okay, when looking at this, you'll see these 3 modules. So what they would do is I call it tri-set. It's like supersetting. Okay, you would superset explosive with core, with prehab. And then after your prehab movement, you would go back to the explosive movement, then the core movement, and then the prehab movement. Whatever the sets and reps are for that. So if we have 3 sets of each movement, after those 3 sets are completed, they move on to module 2. And the reason why this works out so well is because none of these movements really have anything to do with the other movement. Okay, so the core movement doesn't really have much to do with an explosive movement. The prehab movement doesn't really have much to do with any of those. So you can look at it as active recovery in between the movements or in between the main movement. Okay, once again, 3 sessions per week. We follow that session structure each time. Okay, each session has a theme. I talked about training on multiple planes. So session 1 will be a sagittal-based theme. Session 2 will be a frontal-based theme. And session 3 will be a transverse-based theme. Okay, if you are unaware of what those sagittal, frontal, and transverse terms mean, sagittal is your basic moving up and down straight ahead. So your regular cleans, your squats, things that take place kind of straight ahead. Your frontal plane is like lateral movement, lateral lunges, side bends, think Cossack squats, things like that. And your transverse is your twisting movements, okay, your rotational lunges, things like that. Rotational high pull, which I have an example of. So even though we are track athletes by nature and most of the running events, or not all the running events and jumping events, take place primarily on a sagittal plane with the exception of pole vault and high jump, we need to be balanced because what happens is you're overusing all those muscles in the sagittal plane constantly. Those frontal and transverse plane muscles get weak. And that's when you create injuries, when there's imbalance. Once again, the bicycle spoke. Cycle structure. So here's that neural training, volume, and your strength development cycles. Okay, each week in the 4-week cycle has a theme. Okay, so we run 4-week cycles. Week 1 is base week. Okay, week 2 is our volume week. Week 3 is our unload week. And week 4 is our performance week. Okay. Now, why do I like this structure? Well, first of all, it's worked out really, really good for me. We've had really good results and predictable results, okay? So the base week, they're feeling okay. The volume week, they're pretty loaded up heavy, so they may not feel very good that week. Unload week, they're feeling just okay. You would think, okay, well, this unload week, they should feel better since we're not loaded up. It takes a week to adjust to that, okay? So the performance week, that's why it's called performance week. You're feeling good that week. The intensity's up, the volume's down, and you should be hitting your farthest jumps, your farthest throws, your fastest times, etc. Now, we run 3 4-week cycles. And the beauty of this is I have a checkpoint every 4 weeks. So every 4th week is a performance week, and that should line it up to say that periodization model is working good. If it doesn't work or they don't perform well on that 4th week each cycle, then I did something wrong or they did something wrong. And we got to get that figured out before the big meets start. So once again, 3 4-week cycles. The cycle 1 is the volume week. Okay, we do our Olympic lifts at 3s, our power lifts at 5. So once again, Olympic lifts, clean, snatch, jerk, power lifts, squat, deadlift, bench press, and we're between 70 and 80%. Cycle 2, strength development. Okay, Olympic lifts 2s, power lifts 3s, and we're between 75 to 90%. And you can plug those numbers in based on your unload week, your base week. So your base week, let's look back at cycle 1. Your base week would be 3 sets of 70%. Okay, your volume week would be 5 sets at 75%. Your unload week would actually be only 65% at 2 sets, and then your performance week would be 2 sets at 80%. That's basically how it works. Our neural training is cycle 3. Okay, we're only doing singles on the Olympic lifts, power lifts. We're doing doubles, and we're at 80 to 100%. We have a prep week, so this would be the week leading up to the league championship or your CIF finals or your state meet, whatever you prefer. Very much like an unload week. And like I said, it's leading into testing or a major competition. So we all have different level athletes. We have league level competitors. We have CIF prelim, CIF finals, and we all have up to state meet competitors. My shot putters, I've been very fortunate to have good athletes the last number of years. I could plan for their state meet normally if they're that talented, where I know they could be kind of loaded up and still get through the preliminary meets. So their prep week would be the week before the state meet. All right, so now we're getting some fun stuff, some videos of some multi-jump examples. All right, so this is an example of a high volume, low to medium intensity jump circuit. Now our goal here is not to learn how to jump higher. Basically, we're preparing all our tendons and all our ligaments for future hard training, okay? So this is very, very detailed in a sense where when you see the ankle hops or forward hops, low amplitude, we're going heel toe, really working the strength of the ankle area, okay? I name all my jumping circuits after Sith Lords, okay? It's an easy way for me to file things. So, for example, this one's name is named Maul. The next one should be named Tyrannus. Then we have Vader and Palpatine and so on. So, star jumps right here, followed by power skips for height. Like I said, it's just medium intensity, just skipping it, not completely high, but high enough to be a little more intense. Ankle hops, heel toe. We move to power skips for distance. Once again, all 3 planes of movement. We're doing some speed skaters on the frontal plane. Use your heel toe, forward jumps, low amplitude. And finally, single leg butt kicks. These are pretty challenging, especially at the very end when you're tired. All right. Here's the next example. So for example, when we do that jump circuit on a Monday, we do our plyos about 72 hours apart. So this next jump circuit would take place on a Thursday, okay? Got some split squat jumps here. Some easy broad jumps, heel to toe. Knees to chest. Backward hops, low amplitude down. Now we're going toe, heel. So for your throws coaches, that's good for gliders, glide shot putters. Heels to butt. Straddle squat jumps. Left, right is this one, and it is heel toe. And finally, lateral squat jumps. Once again, trying to train on the frontal and sagittal planes here. All right. Now, this is what I mean by, this is Darth Plagueis here, okay? Box jumps ascending. You had a 3-inch, a 6-inch, a 12-inch, an 18-inch, and a 24-inch. There's 2 ways to do this, okay? You can do it over all the boxes with as little time on the ground as possible, or you can go up on top of the box, down, up on top of the box, down. Once again, as soon as you hit the ground, explode up. You'll see that happen on the last box here. All right, so those are our box jumps ascending, and we would do these during the strength development cycle. All right, so now let's get to our Olympic lift variations. Now, I put in a few traditional ones because so you guys understand what I'm talking about, or if you may not know what the Olympic lifts are, So I added a few in there. This is Hope Gordon. She's a really good shot putter. She's a junior for me. She's going to do a hang snatch here. Okay. So what you'll see on the right-hand side here up on the bar, that's called a push device. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. It's called velocity-based training. And so she has a specific target speed she needs to hit. And if she doesn't hit that speed, if it's too fast, then the load is too light. If the speed is too low, then the load is too heavy. Okay, and why is that important? Because research has shown that every day, individual's mass can range plus or minus 17%. So if you tell your athlete that after a hard day of training, you want them to lift at 80%, it may really feel like 97% to them. But if they're feeling good one day and you tell them to lift at 80%, it may actually only feel like, what, 63%. So we base it off speeds. Therefore, it's all called auto-regulation. We never overtrain them and we never undertrain. We kind of find that specific range where we need to be in to train this characteristic that we want to train. Okay, here's a front jerk. Okay. All right. Okay, now some of you may be afraid or intimidated by the Olympic lifts, and this is the next best thing. And before I move on, and some may disagree with this, but I'm an Olympic lift guy. We do them, but I think you can get away without doing them, especially with this lift right here. If you have a hex bar, it's a hexagon bar, or something people call a trap bar. You can get all the benefits out of doing Olympic lifts by just doing this. And there's very little teaching involved. Just make sure they keep their back straight and they jump as explosively as possible. Okay. One could argue that you don't need a rack to clean or rack to snatch. All right. Because our whole goal here is to get the extension of the ankle, the knee, and the hip. So once that occurs, everything after that may not be as important, especially if somebody who may have a problem with wrist mobility, shoulder mobility, catching the snatch, etc. This covers all boxes. Okay. Okay, so it's a perfect example of what you can do if you're afraid of teaching Olympic lifts. This can get just as much benefit out of doing this as they would the Olympic lifts. Okay, so we talked about us having a transverse-based day. So how do we do transverse-based explosive lifts? This is called a rotational snatch, okay? And it's put in a machine called a landmine or a device called a landmine, but you don't need one. You can put a tennis ball at the end of a bar and put it in a corner and still do this movement, okay? Okay, so this is probably a little bit more comfortable to teach as well, rather than a normal snatch. Okay, we do these a ton. And before I move on a little bit, we may not necessarily do these with our football guys because they need to move big, heavy bodies. But when you're a track athlete or you're a volleyball, basketball, etc., these work extremely well because it's not about moving big bodies. It's about being explosive and dynamic on multiple planes. Okay, here's a side snatch. This is your frontal plane style explosive movement. Okay, once again, another Olympic lift variation, very easy to teach, very safe. Okay, dumbbell, single arm snatch. Okay, so this is a very good movement. And the reason why it's so good is because you cover a lot of boxes with this movement. Number one, okay, it's unilateral, meaning you're moving one arm at a time, okay, which is very specific to things like the shot put or whatnot, okay, or running, okay, very unilateral, cyclical movement. Number two, shoulder stability. Number three, believe it or not, core stability. If you're going to do heavier weight, you got to be able to hold that position with the weight above your head, okay. So it covers a number of boxes, and not only shoulder stability, but also not only core, but also shoulder stability. So it covers a bunch of boxes. It's really good lifts. We do a lot of these. Okay, here's your rotational high pull, another variation for a transverse type day. They're going to be pulling across their body. Right. All right, going back to our velocity-based training. So, for example, what you want to do for back squat, meaning this is in the speed strength category. We want to be not only strong, but we also want to be fast. Because if we're just have absolute strength, we've seen all those guys who don't move very well that are extremely strong. Well, that's not going to help us in track and field or explosive sports. So we have to be able to move a lot of weight or as much weight as we can as fast as possible. Okay, so this is something similar to getting out of the blocks every time. Control on the way down, explode on the way up. So what you'll see is you'll see my device you'll see it lit up right there on my left shoulder, and then you'll see my phone reading it. Okay. Okay, so green means good, red would mean bad. And so now the athletes, you can lift very aggressively, but not heavy. And instead of lifting as much weight as they can, because let's be honest, a lot of guys like to be macho and see how much they can do, and their technique's poor, and they're falling all over the place, and it's dangerous, etc. Let's see how fast you can move something, and you can create a competitive atmosphere. Okay, how fast can you move it exploding up? How fast can you move 60 kilos, 80 kilos, 100 kilos? Okay, rather than having absolute strength where there's a chance where you can get hurt. Okay. All right, here's another alternative to traditional power lifts. Like I said, I like to train unilaterally because that's how the box works, or that's how our body works in sport. Hope is a shot put and discus thrower. Her cycle right now, we're doing step ups. Do we do squats? Yes. Do we do front squats? Yes. But this cycle in particular, we're doing step ups. All right, and box height. What you normally want to do, okay, is if you see here, the bottom of her leg is pretty much parallel to the ground, okay? So that's about a perfect box height for her. This is 14 inches. If you have somebody who's 6 feet, it may be 16 or 18 inches. If you have somebody who's 5'2", it may be 10 inches or 8 inches. But this gives you a very good general place to start, okay, because it kind of works the quad and the hamstring equally. All right, so I don't really have any training ancillary lifts explosively, any examples of that, but I'll go over some things during our session structure of what you could put in there explosively. Okay, so we remember this slide from earlier. Now, if we feel that we're in our neural training cycle and everything should be explosive and fast, then our core movement needs to be explosive and fast. So you can pick a rotational slam or a slam, and those are those movements where you pull over your head and slam it down to the ground as hard as you can. You can move the landmine movement aggressively, fast, and accelerate on the way up. Whatever you're doing is fast, okay? Let's see what else we have here. So hinge movement. So I have some multi-throw routines that we'll see here, and we have a hinge hip movement that's explosive, and that would cover that area of being an explosive movement for an ancillary lift. Upper body push, you can throw in a jerk there. You could do your bench press for velocity-based style, etc. Okay, so those are just some examples of how you can train ancillary movements explosively as well and for power. All right, so we're going to our multi-throw series now. And the reason why I did it in this order is because how we start practice is we normally warm up, do our event, we'll do our plyo. Sorry, we warm up, we do our plyos, do our event, then we'll do our lifting, and then we'll finish with multi-throws, okay? And we always like to finish with something fast and explosive like the sport is done. Okay, so this is a front heave, and a front heave for distance. And you can do it from partner to partner if you like. Your goal here is maximum effort every rep, okay? Full explosion. And you can also do these in place of the Olympic lifts if you don't have access to Olympic lifts. Lunge heave, take some coordination into account here. Heave for height. So this is very much like an Olympic lift. We're getting our ankle, our knee, and our hip extension, and everything's moving straight up in a sagittal manner. Okay. I was fortunate enough to design the weight room at Notre Dame. You see those big walls behind us. That's the very reason why I designed it that way with those big walls, is so we could throw med balls against them because they're an important part of our program. Forward jump, back heave. So a little reaction here. Land and fire. And then finally, our transverse movement here, hammer heave right and hammer heave left. So that's a way to train the core explosively. Pressing movement. So heaving, we would do on a Tuesday, and pressing, we would do on a Friday. Like I said, 72 hours apart. Chest pass from knees. Soccer throw. Incline chest pass with a forward jump, a little bit of reaction again. Shot put right, shot put left. And like I said, this isn't just for throwers. This is for everyone. Sprinters, jumpers, distance runners. Keep the body balanced. Important to have a strong core for posture. Jumping chest pass. And finally, total body throws. You'll see our hinge hip movement in here, our explosive movement. So this is one of them. Single leg hinge and throw. I apologize for me demonstrating most of the lists since we couldn't have a lot of kids on campus at the time I do these videos. I had to demonstrate them all, so that's why I'm doing it. Single leg heave for height. So there's an underhand now. Makes it a little bit more challenging. Okay. And then squat and throw. This is like your jerk. So we have our heave for height, which is like our clean. The squat and throw is like a jerk. And finally, our heave for height, which we saw earlier. So those are 3 med ball series. So for example, we have access to the weight room since I'm the strength coach. Every team I make sure has access to the weight room. But let's say, for example, you don't have access to that weight room and you want to train explosively. So you may want to do heaving on a Monday, pressing on a Wednesday, and total body throws on a Thursday. Okay. I'm sorry, on a Friday. If it were me, I would do that in a little bit different order. I would go Monday heaving. Then Wednesday, I'd come back with the more unilateral stuff, the total body throws, and then I'd come back with pressing again on Friday. All right, combination multi-jumps and throws, okay? I call this series jumps, boxes, and heaves. So we got 2 boxes front heave, 2 hurdles back heave, 360 chest pass right and left, once again, that transverse plane, and then once again, our front heave and our back heave, which we've already seen. So here's our 2 boxes front heave. Two hurdles back heave. .360 chest pass right and left. All right, other explosive options on the frontal plane. Lateral step ups. Go. There's some cueing here because lots of times kids just like to switch their feet. What you want to see if I can pause it at the right time here. Go. Okay, what you want is to tell them they got a string about 4 inches above their head, and they got to hit that string each time when they're at full extension. So that string, when you're at full extension, standing on the box, it's 4 inches above your head. So you got to really extend and jump a little bit to hit that string. All right, it's not just switching your feet. Lateral jump, box jumps. Some speed skaters. which we've covered already in one of our multi-jump routines. Transverse explosive options. These are real challenging right here. We do these a lot with our basketball guys, rotational step-ups.
Go.
Rotational box jumps. All right, so you figure, well, you're giving me all these ideas and all these movements and whatnot. How do I program them into our workout, our training sessions? Okay, I do everything based off of my philosophy of base week, volume week, unload week, and performance week. Lots of times you may hear other coaches talk about how when the volume is up on the track or the throws, their weight room stuff is lower. Okay, so while volume is up on one thing, something else is you're unloading on something else. To me, I want to know if my athletes are truly loaded or truly unloaded. Okay, and so when they're truly loaded, they're doing high volume of lifting, high volume of throwing, high volume of jumping. Okay, when they're truly unloaded, low volume of everything. Okay, therefore you know how they react to everything. If they react to a heavy load, if they react to not being loaded, etc. It's important to know that. And we take a lot of data. I take a lot of data on my athletes to see, how they react better. One time I had two 55-foot shot putters, and they were both about the same height. They're only about 5'5", which isn't big for a shot putter. Josh Anderson and Eric Davis. Well, Josh Anderson reacted really well to throwing heavy implements, and Eric Davis reacted really well to throwing light implements. So when the CIF finals came, the cycle leading up to that, one guy was on heavy implements, one guy was on light implements. All right, and if you have any more questions, want to reach out or follow, I post videos all the time, not only on strength and conditioning stuff, but my second hobby is slow smoke Texas barbecue, so I do some of that stuff online too. My Instagram, my Twitter, my website is garciaperformance.com. I do private coaching. Hammermedia.com is a website my buddy and I from Switzerland we have a podcast. It's called the Hammer Media Podcast, and there's no A in there. It's HMMR. We have heavy hitters on there all the time, like Dan Path, Vern Gambetta, PJ Vazell. Lots of interesting things. It's not just about throwing; it's about sprinting, it's about jumping, etc. So check that out if you're interested. It's free. His site also offers a membership, and there's a bunch of articles from a bunch of big-time coaches from around the world. And it also has a movement library on there. And that movement library I created. All the videos you saw today are on there, including about 300 or 400 more that we've done. So if you're looking for a transverse movement, they're classified by transverse unilateral movements, transverse bilateral movements, transverse core movements, etc. So it's a good resource. So I'll be happy to take your questions now.
Go ahead and unshare your screen if you would, please.
Yep.
And we just added a new session for tomorrow night. It'll be slow smoke Texas barbecue.
Yeah.
How long do you think that session will take? About 12 hours?
Well, right now I actually put on brisket on at 12:22 today. So at about 8:22, I'm going to wrap it. And then it'll be done about 10:30. And then I'll let it sit overnight for about 10 hours. Remember, if you guys do brisket, they don't tell you in Texas that they rest things overnight.
Okay.
So that's the trick that they use. You can't eat it right away. It's too hot to cut, or it's too hot to touch, too hot to cut. So I'll be eating tomorrow for lunch.
So when somebody says, what'd you learn last night online? You can talk about brisket. Here we go. We've got about a half a dozen questions. And if you have any others, you can still type them in while we're asking questions. Since we got such a great resource, we don't want to lose it here. All right, here's the first question from Coach Smith here. Does pausing between jumps on boxes kill the intended response?
Well, that depends on what you're pausing at. When you jump onto the box and you pause on top of the box, what we're looking for is the reaction off the ground. So if you pause on top of the box and step off and hit and explode off, then you're getting what you're looking for. If you fall down off the box and pause there and spend a lot of ground contact time, then you're not. It is killing the intensity. So I tell my kids the ground's like fire. Spend as least time on the ground as possible.
Okay. Can you explain the pigeon stretch for IT band tightness?
Let me see if I have a video of that. Can I share my screen again in a second?
Yeah, by all means, please do.
You can ask another question while I'm looking for that.
All right, this is a good one here. Do you coach the other coaches on your team and on at your school? So I assume that means you work with them too.
If they ask me to, what I do as a strength coach is I ask them how they want their team to play. So let's take basketball, for example. If they want their team to be fast paced, really not a lot of defense, a lot of offense. Okay, we broke the state record last year in 3-point attempts or 3-pointers made. That's how we play. So that's how I train them in the weight room. So I ask the coach what they want first or what they need to work on. And then I apply the program that way. If they're looking to hang out and intern and see how I do things, they're welcome to do that. I have no problem with that. So if, for example, that's a good question, because in COVID times, I did have to do that because we had to be all spread out. So I spend time with the coaches saying, this is how you do the med ball routines, this is how you do the jump routines, etc. But in normal times, that's not necessary because normally they're always with me. Okay.
Did you find the video?
I'm looking. I'm on it right now. I'm looking right now. 1 second.
I'm sharing Nick's contact information again. But again, the presentation is so long or so heavy with the videos, but we will have those up next week. So you'll get this presentation with those videos in it. So you'll be able to see those.
You guys can see my screen now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So this is an example. I'll go over a few things here. Let's see here. 1 second back here. So this is how everything's broken down in the movement library on Hammer Media. So here's an example of something like a pigeon stretch, but this is called a Hawaiian squat. It's kind of a standing. Crawl yourself down. Hold, crawl yourself back up again. Very much like a pigeon stretch, just standing. Okay, let's see here. I'm pretty sure I have the pigeon stretch. This is here it is right here. So for a fairly thick guy, I'm pretty mobile. I work on it. That's a pigeon stretch. So the Hawaiian squat, the pigeon stretch are all things we normally do after we squat. Front squat, back squat, etc. Another one is half kneeling external rotator stretch. They all kind of do the same thing. I just vary them. I mentioned a few things about getting your chest and shoulder girdle ready for lifting the bench. I'll show you guys that right now. So we'll watch this whole ring series here. So this is shoulder stability, this is core, and this is also getting your chest and shoulder girdle ready for bench press. So that was called Superman. This is called Archer. That's the breaststroke. And we end with Iron Cross. All right. So once again, this is what you'll see if you were to go to Hammer Media and become a member, all these different things. One thing I'd like to cover real quick for the next question is this leg circuit right here is very good for 400 meter, 800 meter athletes. It takes roughly a minute to complete when you do full leg circuits. A lot of time under tension. I'm doing only half leg circuit right now, or mini leg circuit, excuse me. We do fulls, which is 20, 20, 20, 10. Takes about a minute to 2 minutes to complete. And you get the same booty lock and whatnot at the end of the 400 meters. So basically it's 10, half leg circuit, 10 squats, 5 lunges each side, 5 dynamic step-ups each side, and 5 jump squats. Full leg circuit is 20, 20, 20, 10. So that's something cool that we do with our athletes. Everything you've seen here, like Kalfani Muhammad, I think he's a 5-time state champion, twice in the 200, twice in the 100, and 4x100. I work with him the whole time. Rodney Glass, Christian Grum, most recently, to play second in the state meet. They did all this stuff. This is exactly what they do.
All right, ready for another one?
Yep.
All right. This may be just for a word about your own survival here. How do you organize practices so you can work with your throwers and still work with the other kids on the team or the other kids in the school for that matter?
Well, the other kids in the school and other teams, we have training throughout the day. So, for example, we'll start at 6:15 a.m. and go 6:15 to 7. Don't have a group 7 to 7:45. And then depending, we have athletic periods now. So, for example, this year was supposed to be girls basketball during first period, and then girls volleyball 7th period, boys basketball and soccer are 4th period, football's 4th period. So that's basically how I work with the other teams. Now, track is Coach McNabb and I are very much on the same page. So our athletes train, we get done about the same time. We all go into the weight room together. We have a big facility, if you can tell on the videos I've shown. We have 18 platforms, 18 stations, kettlebells and bumper plates for every single station. So we're well equipped and we're able to do that.
Okay. Would you do a jump circuit and lifting on the same day?
Yes. So we would warm up. We would do our jump circuit. We would do our event group. We would go on and lift, and that's how we would do it.
And do the kids do their own jump circuits and the other circuits you mentioned, or do they have to do them while you're watching? So
usually, like for example, Lions or my older athletes who I trust and who I know that want to be good, I don't have to necessarily watch them all the time. But when you're starting them out and getting them rolling, yes, you should watch them and be with them for warm-ups, for anything to make sure it's done right. Because next thing you'll know, if you slack one little bit, you're going to come out one day and you're going to see somebody doing something completely wrong, and it's going to upset you, and you have nobody to blame but yourself. So what you see is what you're coaching is basically a good term. So most of the time I am with them unless I trust them 100% and they've been with me for 4 years or 3 years. Then they're kind of can do things on their own.
All right, this question just popped up here. You mentioned that you all go in the weight room at the same time. How long does a typical lifting session? So how long is a typical lifting session? Yeah.
We typically, the way I set things up is there's about 3 people per station in normal times. And a normal lifting session with those 9 movements you saw in those modules, depending on sets and reps, let's say, for example, a base week will take about 40 minutes because we don't have to warm up. We're just coming right in from the track. A volume week will probably take more like 55 minutes. An unload week, less than 30. A performance week, less than 30.
All right, Nick, those are the questions that we have. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier, you're right in the middle of football season, track season, volleyball season, basketball season, baseball season, you name it, Nick's involved in it. So, Nick, thank you so much for spending the time, and your demos were outstanding there. So excellent there. You are quite, and we're all coming over for dinner tomorrow, so that's good.
All right.
All right. Just a couple reminders before we leave you for the last time. All those first 18 sessions of our clinics, they're up. They'll be up there beginning tomorrow at runmountsac.com/education. And then the ones from this week, the 7 from this week, will be up beginning next week. So you'll be able to see all those. And we'll announce the 5 winners of our 2022 Mount Sac Relays VIP experience next week. I will notify you by email if you're a winner, but we will post all the names on the websites so you can see all those. So once again, thank you so much for joining us all these past 4 weeks. We really do appreciate it. And gosh, I hope to see you at a track meet sometime this year, any place. Anyway, good night, Nick, and good night to everybody. Thank you so much.
Yep.